and welcome back to the Costa Rica Travel and Living Podcast. I am your host today, Jessica Licky, Senior Travel Consultant with Costa Rica Vacations. Today we are super excited to join you live here in La Fortuna at the foothills of the Arnal volcano. Today we're going to be joined by Tui, which we will start in a little bit here. But first, if you guys are loving this podcast, please give us a like, a share, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today we're going to be meeting with Tui. She is the wedding expert in all things here La Fortuna rainforest area. So without further ado, let's dive on in.
Thanks, Jess. I really appreciate the invitation and am excited to talk a little bit about weddings and
Awesome.
Here in Costa Rica.
So I think it's important, we always like to, for those that don't know you or haven't followed along, tell us about how you ended up here, Costa Rica, your story, the background.
Thanks. Well, I was actually born here. I was born here and I was here until I was 5, and then we moved back to the States where I was raised and educated. And where I met my husband, and one day my husband saw pictures of Costa Rica and said, "Why aren't we living there?" And I thought, that's crazy.
Good question.
And so we planned a trip and came down and just fell in love with it and said, yeah, why aren't we living here? So we moved down. That was almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, we started initially managing a small bed and breakfast over at the beach, and I naturally fell into weddings there. I started planning the weddings for our clients there, and in my role there, I got to know a lot of other wedding planners in the country, and there are some really amazing and dynamic wedding planners here. And when I left the hotel, I began freelancing for the other planners and moved up here to La Fortuna, to this area, and quickly became known as the go-to person in this area. And after a few years, I decided to start my own company, my own brand. And when I did, it was very important to me that I started something that was very different from what my colleagues were doing. And so a lot of my colleagues were working at the beaches, doing luxury weddings, all-inclusive resorts. And what we really enjoyed doing was kind of the opposite. We kind of liked the adventure elopements, the couples who wanted just very small, quiet, intimate weddings, who wanted to hike down to the bottom of a waterfall and just take beautiful pictures early in the morning. And so that's kind of what we leaned into, being as that's what we really enjoyed doing, and those are the kind of clients we really enjoyed working with. Those are the ones that we resonated with, and so when we began our brand, we started it as an eco-ethical brand. We really want to make sure that we're supporting local venues, local vendors, and giving back to the community as much as possible. That's a cornerstone of actually the company is trying to be actually regenerative and inviting all of our clients to give back in some way, to participate in some kind of give back program to the community.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think I always recommend you to all of my travelers that are looking to come.
We love your clients.
Because what you do is different and unique, and perhaps we have different opinions or tastes as other people, but you can get a beach wedding almost anywhere. That's my opinion. And so the small, unique, intimate rainforest, volcano, hiking, waterfalls, tons of wildlife,
Yes.
that is what is really special about not just this area, but the rainforest, mountains, cloud forests here in Costa Rica, I think in general.
Yeah, and it's our experience also when you're in such a beautiful, amazing setting that that you don't need a lot of other things. You know, like it's nice to decorate and to bring in some decor and the
flowers, tropical flowers,
right? A few things, but like really, it's a beautiful backdrop. So
awesome. Tell me a little bit about the best time to plan a wedding here in Costa Rica. What time of the year? What should people take into account?
We always say there's not a bad time. Honestly, we're in the rainforest, so we don't follow the typical rain patterns. We don't have a set of a dry season and a wet season. It can rain any time of year, any day of the week. So we're always ready for that. We're always prepared for that. for that reason, we've watched clients choose dry season, hoping to avoid rain and get rain. We've watched clients looking for rain, choose a rainy season day, and then have it be perfectly dry. So we never know. We always say if rain on your wedding day is not going to ruin your day, don't pick. Don't choose this area.
Right.
So that being said, generally speaking, we want to stay away from peak travel dates. So that's going to be your Christmas, Easter weeks, because already the travel market is so saturated, and it's vacation time also for a lot of Costa Ricans and vendors and stuff. So we also see prices increase, availability decrease. So we usually stay away from those weeks. Otherwise, what's considered rainy season in other parts of the country are sometimes the clearest and most beautiful parts of the season here for us. So, yeah.
Awesome. And how much time do you think people should plan a wedding in advance? Like, is 6 months enough? Is 9 months enough? Is a year too much? Is it not enough? Like, what does the planning process look like normally?
So really, it depends on how complicated how many vendors you have, how complicated you want to make it. We follow what we call phase planning, which means that we can extend it or speed it up over as much time as we have. We have 4 phases. Each phase has about 10 to 12 actionable items, so that means that we can do it over 4 months or 2 years.
Okay, awesome. And what do the costs normally look like for the couple?
Again, it really depends on what they're looking for. So for the couples that want to do something very simple, they can do something very affordably. If they're looking for just a symbolic ceremony with some, we have a truck passing by. If they're looking for just a simple ceremony with, hair and makeup and some flowers and photography, it's something that we can do very, very reasonably, usually within a couple of $1,000s. If they're looking to do something big, with a DJ and 50 people or 100 people, that's something that we can do as well. And those costs average, usually for a full planning wedding, something like that, anywhere between $500 to $1,000 per guest.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's what the couple ends up paying.
Right. That's what the couple ends up paying.
And tell me a little bit about why someone should use a travel planner. Aside from the perhaps obvious reasons that you're planning a wedding in another country that you've probably never been to or have been to very few amount of times, why should someone start with a travel planner? Oh,
easy. Okay. Planning a wedding is a lot of work. Yeah, even when you have a planner, it's a lot of decisions. It's a lot that you have to kind of figure out and think about. And planning travel or planning a trip is also a lot of work for yourself. If you start to include travel planning for all of your friends and family, it can quickly become a full-time job. And if you already have a job and you're trying to plan a wedding, there's no way that you can handle it. Honestly, partnering with a travel planner is like the best thing for us, because then we're able to focus on the wedding planning. And we let everybody do what they're good at, and we let everybody do what they enjoy doing. And so with you handling the travel planning and us handling the wedding, it's awesome.
We just got married, or I just got married in June.
Congratulations.
And I said to my now husband, I'm like, I was ready to plan a wedding. And I was ready to plan a destination wedding. I wasn't ready to plan the trips for 50 people before and after my wedding. And then it was, my flights changed and I'm coming in early. And because there's that relationship, right? Everyone reached out to me rather than our in-country team, which is fine. But it's like these layers of stress. They're like, I can do that. Oh, this is going to be easier. A destination wedding is going to be easier. And it's not always the case. And so if you partner with the right people, right? Travel planning, wedding planning, and a local expert that, it's not like having to go out and find your own providers and, trying to find them on Google and maybe look for some reviews and just blindly trusting this person that you're going to pay $1,000 or $2,000 for a video, right?
I think that's a really important point that you made. And I think it's something that we watch our clients kind of experience. And that's something that I think that people considering a destination wedding should think about. That when you invite a lot of people into a wedding or into a different country for a wedding, there's a certain amount of kind of responsibility that you feel for them. You want to make sure that the provider that is going to be picking them up from the airport is a solid, reliable provider. Because if not, you're going to be worried about, is Aunt Lucy coming in? Did she get her flight? Did she get her shuttle? Is she going to be happy in her hotel? So there's this kind of sense of assumed responsibility that does add another layer of stress. And my job as a planner is to try to take away as much of the stress as possible. And absolutely, by having an amazing team to be able to field all of those questions for all of your guests, it takes a tremendous amount of stress off.
And I also want to take this second to give an unsolicited commercial for you, because I think as someone who just got married and also works in the destination planning space, unfortunately or fortunately, and perhaps it's just the market, but the wedding culture here, and perhaps in other countries as well, runs on commission, right? So a lot of planners even, or hotels, only recommend providers, whether it be the rentals or the tent or the photographer or the shuttle service, they only recommend who pays them the most commission.
It's kind It's kind of a taboo subject. It's kind of something that people don't like to talk about. It's a little hush hush. And I don't know, the travel business is something that is commission based, and the wedding business, when it marries with the destination wedding business, it has gotten, I think, a little crossed, and it's something that we made the decision on when we started our company, that we weren't going to take commissions, we weren't going to ask for commissions. We think that vendors and providers, first of all, shouldn't have to pay to work. So when we're hiring local vendors, local Costa Ricans, we don't think that they should have to pay us to be able to work. And we also think that people should be recommending vendors, providers, and services based on what's best for the client and not what they think they're going to get back at the end. And so that has given us this really great ability, and I think flexibility, to look at things from a different way. So when people are like, we want to DIY, or we really want to, we don't want to save, or we don't want to spend a lot of money on this, we want to save here, we really are able to hold that space and just help the clients connect with what's best for them. And we have no ulterior motive.
And for me, as someone who just got married, that was super important. Being able to hand pick the vendors based on who was best for what we were looking for. And maybe there's one part of the wedding that you're like, I don't need to spend a ton of money on this. Or I really want to make sure I've got some great live music. I really want, a solid guitar player. And it depends on how big the wedding is too, right? But even for 10 people, some nice music at dinner is maybe important, right? Or I really want to make sure that, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for XYZ thing. The florals and this beautiful country are really important to me, that the table looks nice, or whatever it might be. And so as someone who just got married, knowing that I am able to work with the vendors that are best for me and my budget too, right? That I'm not going to overpay for something just so that my planner gets a cut. So Amen. I think it's something important to talk about, especially when it comes to costs.
Yeah.
Because knowing that you're partnering with someone, if I tell you, hey, Tui, I've got $5K, what can I do with that? You're going to tell me what I can do with that $5K. Not that, okay, well, $5K, that's, $700 in commission to whoever these providers are. And so I think it's important, and like you said, perhaps a bit taboo to talk about. But when it comes to costs and budget, it's something that you should be aware of. If you're looking to come or going to any other country to plan a wedding, it's something that you should be aware of. And I think that's also what makes this part of Costa Rica special, because once you get over to the beaches and there's these large resorts, all-inclusives, they work totally different, right?
Well, I think that's something kind of interesting also about this part of the country, and I don't know if it's something that you've noticed, but we have no resorts here. We have no chain hotels. There are no chain hotels here. And I don't know really why that, but but it's fantastic.
It's beautiful.
It's awesome. Yeah. So that's to say that all of the properties in this area are they're family owned. You know,
they're old fincas.
They're right. Yes, and it's so
Old
fun.
farmland.
It's so fun to like witness some of these hotels where you know, we've got one right across the street here where you know, they've got like a zip line on property, and they've got horseback riding on property, and then we've got like some villas being built, and like each part of that is owned by a different part of the family, and they're all working together, and yeah, it's really we that's why we've decided to make this area our home. We've been here full time for 7 years. Our daughter goes to school here. We live here. We love it, and we decided to really focus our energy here. And again, that's why it's important for us to be working with local vendors as much as possible.
And I think you probably get the question often, hey, Tui, you know, they call you up or shoot you an email, hey, Tui, saw you, you know, found you on Google, etc. It's just me and my husband. We want to do a small elopement. What does that cost look like? Like if someone truly just wants to go find a local waterfall, legally get married here in Costa Rica, so they would have an officiant or the lawyer, maybe a bouquet and a boutonniere, and some champagne afterwards. Like really, there's no party. There's maybe some photos, but like what is that range? Like from the most simple wedding, and then also maybe like what are your costs, right? Because you work that apart from. It's not hidden.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Yes, our costs are transparent. We charge what we charge for our planning. To answer your question first, in terms of elopements. First of all, I have to say, I eloped.
Awesome. Where'd you guys elope?
I eloped many years ago in Florida. But I'm a huge fan of elopements. I think it's really important for couples to choose what resonates for them. For some couples, they have big families and it works for them. So I'm a big fan of elopements, and I find it sometimes ironic that I'm working as a wedding planner, but here we are. So I would say on average, our clients spend anywhere between $2,500 to $5,000, probably $3,000 to $4,000 average for a total cost day of on an elopement. That's going to depend on if they have professional makeup, if there's a venue fee, if they add video, things like that. That's where
that would include the legal
and that would include the legal portion of it. Our costs start for an elopement right around $1,000, $1,000 to $1,200 for elopement planning. We during the pandemic kind of created this like in between level between elopement planning and full planning. Our full planning rates start around $4,000, between $4,000 and $5,000. And that gets you from beginning to end. We see you through the entire process. We don't like to have a lot of additional fees. We just kind of, cover your whole planning.
You know what the hours are. You know what
exactly.
work it takes.
Exactly. And during the pandemic, we kind of came up with this in between where we call it a micro wedding, and that runs between $2,500 to $3,500. That generally sees a ceremony that includes some decor, and then like a light dinner. It's not a full party. It's not a reception. It's not DJs and. But it's kind of an in-between. It's a little bit more than an elopement, where there might be some guests and, again, additional decor and a few additional vendors, but it's not a full-blown wedding.
It's so funny. I don't know if you felt this way, but as someone who just got married, again, you're like, oh, I can do the wedding. Like, wedding planning is going to be so fun. And then you, start to think about each detail, and you're like, it's not just the ceremony. It's the transportation. It's the accommodations. It's the decor. It's the florals, it's the food, it's the caterer, it's the music, it's the photographer, it's the video. It's like there are so many details. And again, to plan it in a country that you've never been to and or have been to very few amount of times, it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. Would you say, tell me a little bit about your typical couple. Do you normally do elopements? Do you normally do those micro weddings? Do you tend to have, what is the average, here in La Fortuna, what is the market, or at least the ones that land on your page or come to you, what would you say is the average wedding? What does that look like?
Okay, that's a great question. I would say even pre-pandemic that about half of our couples were elopement couples. So they were couples that were looking for something unique. They were looking for something that wasn't the typical beach wedding. They were looking for something that was just them, that was a little bit more romantic, that was a little bit more adventurous. So we've always had, and that's kind of how we started the business. So I would say half of our clients are that. And then since the pandemic, we've gradually seen the re-emergence of the big wedding. And incrementally each year since the pandemic, we're handling more and bigger weddings. That's also come as a result of having a few years of experience, really understanding the venues here and kind of who's capable of what and where to guide my clients. It is overwhelming. It's completely overwhelming, which is why I eloped. And so what we try to do is we try to break it down. I consider myself a guide. I guide my clients through the process. And we just take it step by step, which is why we follow the phase planning. We just say, okay, we're gonna take step one. We're gonna figure out your date. We're gonna figure out your venue. Those are our cornerstone pieces. Once we get those in place, then we're gonna really start to lean in and identify your key vendors. That's also where we spend most of our money. So once we do that, it's really not complicated. It's not rocket science, but it takes a certain amount of knowing what to do. And we've also really narrowed down all of the options for you. So as we get to each step, we say, okay, this is the next step. Here are your options. And then we tell you just what our experience has been with each different provider, and we let each couple choose the choice that resonates for them.
I had a super funny, just hearing you talk about the vendors, we had a super funny experience. I say funny now because it's been probably 2 years since it happened. It was terrifying in the moment. We had a traveler, there used to be this property that we worked with. We no longer work with them anymore for other reasons. We had it was like a 15, 20 person wedding. And there's also this level, I think, of, you're like, hey, I don't want to pay $1,000 for a wedding or for a photographer. I found this one for $400 on Facebook. I'm going to go with them. Totally fine, right? Like at the end of the day, we do what our travelers feel the most comfortable with. We're not here to push or pull any provider onto any traveler or couple, especially on their big day. So she had found, it was the DJ, it wasn't the photographer. It was the DJ who also had the audio for the ceremony. So they're in the middle of the ceremony, and all of a sudden the DJ comes out. He's on a video call with his mom, walks down the aisle, and we're like,
in the middle of the ceremony.
In the middle of the ceremony. We're like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, these are the things that because we didn't know them. I mean, there's so many people on Facebook, and there's tons of really great providers, but this is where travel planning, someone who has experience with with many of the providers, this is where your added value comes in, right? Anyone can, plan a wedding based on what they find on Google, but having the experience, knowing the owners or the
management,
management of each provider and where they're coming from and the experience you've had with them is so valuable, and I think sometimes underrated.
It's priceless. It's priceless because again, we don't make the decisions for our clients. We recently had we had some new clients sign on, and they already had quite a few things in place. I was kind of surprised. I was like, okay, we'll help you. But like really, they had their venue, they had their photographer. They already had quite a bit in place, and they were at a point where they were ready to hire the next vendor. And they had an idea of who they wanted to hire, and it's somebody who we have experience with, who we like very much as a person, but we wanted to just explain what our experience was with them as a vendor and let them, make the decision. And we offered them some additional options as well. And they were so funny when they heard that, because it was something that they had already kind of had that inclination. Mm-hmm. They already suspected that, and so having me kind of come in and confirm that for them, it allowed them to make the choice that was best for them. It is priceless, I think, and I have to say that the fact that I've spent so many years, and we continue to freelance for other planners, we continue to refine our provider list, and we get to see new vendors in practice without having to test them on our clients, which is great.
And it's a small town. Like La Fortuna and Arenal, it's funny, my husband is Costa Rican and he's from this area, and his aunt had a hotel here in Fortuna for a few years, and we go out and he knows everybody, and so it's funny when you talk and you're like, oh, maybe you don't know them personally, but you're like, oh, that's so-and-so's wife, she opened up that business. And so it really is a small town, which is what we personally love about this area, because you are constantly supporting the locals, right? In a very small town, but it's also very easy to know of or to know how certain people work, because there's also not an infinite amount of options.
Right. The area doesn't have a tremendous amount of wedding vendors, and we do have some really amazing gems here.
We are in one right now that
yes.
Tui found. Maybe we'll share it with you later, but I mean, there are some really special.
And that's what we really pride ourselves in, is, again, we've really made the decision to do things that are a little bit different, and so we've dedicated ourselves to making sure that we know as many options as possible that fall within or underneath that umbrella.
Well, guys, I really hope you've enjoyed that chat live with Jess Licky and Tui regarding everything wedding related and getting married at the base of the tropical Arenal volcano here in Costa Rica. I hope you've enjoyed Jess's really insightful conversations over the last few weeks. She has been great. I've certainly enjoyed listening and watching along to some of her conversations. If you want to reach out to Jess, you can do so, as her information will be in the description box as always. And she is one of our very best travel consultants here at Costa Rican Vacations. I highly recommend getting in touch with her. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast in general, and if you haven't, give us a thumbs up or a like, and please don't forget to subscribe to never miss a future episode. So for myself, Adam Baker, and Jess Licky, who no doubt will be on in a future episode as well as myself, we look forward to seeing you next time. Hasta la próxima.